Now, next up, we have human potential and parenting expert. When I mentioned the name Nikki Bush to my wife, she was like, "Yeah, she did something with, like at my girls' school. My girl goes to Brescia, and so I guess that's where the parenting expert came. I don't know, she didn't come and tell me because I didn't become a. Maybe if she did, I would have, gotten some nuggets to become a better parent. But anyway, great to have Nikki Bush here with us. She is an award-winning speaker and best-selling author. Nikki, thank you very much for joining us. And we're really looking forward to hearing from you on how families can rebuild relational bridges that may have come under strain during this time. And please also do share any questions you may have for Nikki, some of which she'll respond at the very end of her presentation. So over to you, Nikki. Thank you so much. You're going to have to unmute yourself there, Nikki. Don't know if you can. There we go. Not yet. It's still unmuted. There we go.
Right. Is the sound clear?
Yes, loud and clear.
Fabulous. So I'm also going to share my screen, Luiso, because I've got something that I think will be very useful for people to see. So, I'm in the, people know me as the human potential and parenting expert, and I have done a lot of talks to corporates and schools over this time, and been helping with COVID parenting support and just general human potential support. But I talk a lot about the COVID parenting paradox. And that is that, pre-COVID, people were always coming to me at the end of talks and workshops and seminars and saying, we work full time and we don't have enough time with our children. Our wish is to have more quality time with our kids. And now, by some very bizarre twist of fate through COVID-19, we've been blessed with our children 24/7. And people just have not known what to do with all this time with their children. And of course, having to balance this work from home, school from home situation, which has been very, very demanding. So I would like to just, touch on a few important points. And the one is that as adults, we create the emotional temperature in our homes. It's our responsibility. And I noted that you said something earlier, which was really nicely put, that we respond to people, we react to situations. And as leaders in our homes and families, we as the adults need to be responding and not reacting. We need to be awake and aware about what is triggering us, what deep patterning is triggering us, because we are responsible for creating the safe container to hold our family, to hold the emotional connection. And our children are actually going through trauma, loss, and grief. And so let's just understand where our children are coming from. And some of our pastors have given us some insight here. Our children are going through as much trauma as we have gone through with COVID. And as somebody who has walked the path of trauma, loss, and grief, my husband was actually murdered in our home almost exactly 3 years ago, November 3 years ago. I spotted this trauma, loss, and grief literally 1 week into COVID. And I thought, my goodness, every person in the world is going to go through a form of trauma, loss, and grief. And we need to be very awake and aware about this, because it impacts on all of us. It impacts on our behavior. It impacts on the lens through which we view the world. And there's so much that goes with the loss of choice and the loss of freedom. That is what we've been mourning, is our loss of the right to move about when we want to do what we want when we want to do it, to go back to work or not to go back to work, to be able to send our kids back to school or not. So our children have also gone through trauma, fear, and loss, and that has led to quite a lot of frustration for them, because they don't have the mature brain to deal with where we're coming from. And so it has created a neediness in children, especially young children who can't voice what's going on. So they've needed to act out how they're feeling, as opposed to being able to speak how they're feeling, not being able to have play dates, not being able to have my party, not being able to, well, for those who've got the older children, having a matric dance, all of those things. I have a niece in matric. It's been a devastating year, a lot of grief around that. So we have to really understand, and we've had some really excellent input here. Sipho was saying we need to listen. The art of listening is something that COVID's bringing to front and center. We've been so used to speaking at people. Now the art of real communication is coming into play, both in congregations and at home. We really need to be listening to hear, not to respond. A lot of our communication is about thinking about how we're going to respond to this person, whether it's our child or some adult who's talking to us. And we really need to be asking our kids, how are you feeling? What's going on for you? And we can't promise we can change the situation. So we also need to be realistic. But we can say to our kids, I know you didn't ask for this. I know it wasn't on your wish list. But it's happened, and I know that you're going to cope with it. I know you can cope with it. We need to be raising people up, not treating them as victims, but empowering them to find their own solutions. What do you think you can do? You can't have a friend around to play, but what else do you think you can do? How can I help you do that? So actually helping people come up with their own solutions, even our children, is actually truly important at this time, so that they feel some form of control, some form of, it's control, because we all feel out of control right now. And then, of course, there's this working from home one step back with the control thing, and being in a situation where we have to follow certain rules, like wearing masks and sanitizing. Now, how do you make that real for children? We need to talk to them in terms they can understand. Every game has rules, like Uno, Monopoly, etc. There are rules of play. And although COVID is not a game, it also comes with rules like Monopoly, like Uno. And some of those rules are nice, and some of them are not nice. And we have to be strategic, and we have to play this game well in order to stay healthy, in order to protect ourselves and each other. And then skipping forward to this work from home situation. And by the way, there's a free download on nikkibush.com that our listeners can get hold of. And it's called Keep Your Business Running, The Realities of Working from Home with Kids. Because what I do find is that many team leaders in organizations might not have children of their own, or might be past that point, and they've forgotten what it feels like to have younger children who are very demanding and needy. And we have to understand where our children are at in terms of age and stage, because it impacts on their concentration spans. And if you've got children under the age of 3, they're going to interrupt you every couple of minutes while you're trying to work from home. And that's realistic. And we have to be realistic. That's the operative word here. And we have to build work time around that. And any entrepreneur who's built a business from home, as I have with children, knows that to get really deep work done, you do it before your children wake up in the morning and after they go to bed at night. Yes, your day is very long, and unfortunately there are no shortcuts. It is what it is, and children under the age of certainly 9 or 10 are going to need supervision, and under the age of 7 they'll need a lot of supervision, and under the age of 3 they'll need constant supervision. That's realistic. Most parents are not born with child development guidelines, hardwired into them. So that download that I'm offering you on my homepage on nikkibush.com, just go to COVID and you'll see it comes up as a downloadable white paper, will give you a lot more insight than we have time to discuss right now. But some keys around family sanity and reconnection is children want a feeling of safety, and we provide that with routine and boundaries. And when we are under stress, either we go into over control and we put in too many boundaries that are too tight, or we do nothing and we just give in, because it's easier to give in than to fight. So routine is the order of things in the day. What happens first, what happens after that, and what happens after that. If it shifts by half an hour or an hour in time, it doesn't matter, but keep the order the same, because that brings predictability, and children don't panic then. Your meal times are the kind of backbone of your routine, but waking up and going to bed time are the bookends to a family routine. And I know, because everyone's at home, it's so easy to say, well, we'll wake up when we wake up. We'll go to bed when we go to bed. But that actually doesn't help your kids to feel safe and secure. So that is an important part of reconnecting with your family, providing safety. And then don't forget that play is the language of childhood. It is different to words. So if you can make a time every day, if you've got kids under 12, have some time when you are fun, when you need to be emotionally present. Switch off your phone and shut that laptop. It is the only way you can communicate to your children that you are fully all in, that you are fully with them. Otherwise, they know that you're only listening with half an ear, that you're only playing a game with half of your brain, because the rest is waiting for that phone call or that email to come through. But play is a wonderful thing. If you go through that white paper that you can download from my website, get to the end, there are loads of downloadable resources, including links to what I call boredom busters. You can position yourself as a hero in your child's life story by just choosing to show up and have some fun every now and again. And I think there's a link there to my Toy Talk website that'll take you to about 30 different activities you can do with your children that just utilize what you have in your home. They don't cost you anything. It's making fun out of nothing, which is actually showcasing resilience and resourcefulness, which is one of the key things that we need to be taking away from COVID, is how do we become more resilient, more resourceful in times when we're not in control of the external circumstances, which we call disruption. And I think that COVID really is just a little invitation about what might be coming down the line over the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years. There's going to be a lot of disruption. This is one kind of disruption. And we have to recognize that what we're going through with COVID is not an event. Once again, to give children a very concrete example, a wedding ceremony is an event. It happens once, well, unless you get divorced, of course, but it happens once. The marriage is a process, and the marriage goes on for the 5 years of the marriage or the 50 years of the marriage. Our first 5 weeks of lockdown, we could kind of quantify that as an event, but dealing with the fallout of COVID is a process that's going to take us 12 to 18 months. We're only, what, Louis, so 8 or 9 months down the track. We've got another while to go before we've really kind of come to terms with the impact of COVID. So very, very important that we don't think of COVID as an event that's going to be over, that we realistically talk about COVID as being a process. And when you're talking to your kids, you need to talk to them about this process that's not going to be over tomorrow. Do not make false promises to your children that things are all going to be well and good and you're back at school on XYZ date, because anything like that could shift in a heartbeat. And I think we've realized that during COVID, that we're not in control. And so we're in a process of adjustment and transition to trauma. Every one of us, adults and children, we were firstly immobilized by our fear. And please take a picture of this slide. It's really useful. We were immobilized by our fear, and good grief, we're going to be locked down. Are you joking? It was this incredulity. And then it happened. It really happened. And, the first thing we felt was incompetent and unconfident. We're not used to this place of taking this, our freedom away from us and not having the freedom to choose. And then to cope, we minimized the threat. We made it more manageable. And I don't know about you, but I actually found myself pacing up and down my small little backyard during deep lockdown going, I was having a bad day. If Nelson Mandela could get out of 24 years of incarceration and do what he did, then I can make a plan. My circumstances are nothing next to his. So I minimized the threat to me and I made it manageable. And we go in and out of depression. You don't go through any of these stages in a linear way. And every time our president has had a chat to us around possibly, maybe, perhaps going to the next stage of lockdown and then maybe not, we've gone into depression all over again. And when you go into depression, it's a withdrawal and you feel really incompetent and unconfident. And then then we get to the stage where I think we're floating around acceptance right now, where we're realizing that we can't change this, that this is really for real, and that the only way forward is forward. We can't be wishing to uncovid ourselves, just as I cannot unwidow myself. We cannot undo where we've been. So we're accepting this new reality, and we're starting to test it, like you're going back to church, like you're having kids' church outside, like we're making a plan. You know, that's what Simon was saying. Make a plan. If you have to do it outdoors, you do it outdoors. I loved what Joe was saying about, let's just get people together to chat, socially distance, bring them into the room with no agenda. We're so not used to just stepping into the void and letting it create itself. But connection is going to look very, very different. So we're starting to test this new reality, and ultimately we'll search for meaning, and we'll internalize that actually life wasn't actually all a bed of roses before COVID. And, you know, maybe it's going to be better when we get through this transition stage. We'll hold on to the really good stuff, and we will let go of the stuff that didn't serve us. So this is a stopping point, a resetting point. So I'm going to leave it at that, because I think you might have some questions for me, and I'll try and find you that link to pop into the window here. But otherwise, it's on nikkibush.com for the white paper.
Thank you, Nikki. So here is, I think I've got 2 questions here. Well, first of all, can we share your white paper on our websites and social media pages?
Sure.
Once we get it on there, great stuff. Whoever asked that, well, there is your answer. Quick and short. Right. Second one, come on.
I'm finding you the link as we speak.
Okay, great stuff. Thank you. How do we create those rhythms and routines in homes where parents leave work very early and they get home very late?
Well, yes, that's quite similar to a normal day pre-COVID, actually. Those rhythms and routines are going to probably be set by caregivers if you're not there. So if you do have a caregiver, we need to have conversations with caregivers around, and I've just put the link into the chat. We need to have conversations about what the routines need to be, so that when we come home, if you can time your homecoming with your children's bath time or dinner time, a time of connection. What I do find with busy parents on any given day, let alone during COVID, is there's this huge feeling of guilt that we bring into the home as we come home. I've been away, I feel so bad. I feel so bad because you can't go back to school. And you're not necessarily verbalizing this, but you're giving off this energy of guilt. And the energy of guilt is really, really destructive, because when you are feeling guilty, you're putting your children in the driver's seat. And when children are in the driver's seat, they feel very unsafe. It's an inappropriate responsibility. So we have to accept, if we work, and if we have to work, it's part of life. And we need to not buy into the guilt of it. It is what it is. What else do we put into place to compensate for that? And then we have to live with that. Because if we walk around, I had a working couple the other day talking to me, saying that their 2-year-old will not go to sleep before 10:30 at night. And I said, there's only one reason why a 2-year-old stays up at night, and that's because she's allowed to. And the reason she's allowed to is because one or either or both parents are feeling guilty that they don't spend enough time with her. Because when this child spends time with her grandparents and it's bedtime, she just goes to sleep. They read 2 stories and they put her to bed, and she doesn't even think of getting up. The boundary is clear. And as we were talking, the dad said, well, I work from home. He's a financial advisor. He said, I'm not feeling guilty. But his wife said, I'm feeling terribly guilty because I work away from the home. And so her child is playing the guilt card. Children know exactly where to hit us. They know where the jugular is. They know where the pain point is. And mummies, we have a guilt gland this big, and dads have a guilt gland this big. And so our guilt gland is so easy to hit as mothers. We want to feel needed. We want to feel like our children love us all the time. We don't want our children to not like us. And so we do as much as we can to make sure our children don't get mad with us. But I do need to say that it's very realistic to allow children to get mad. They will always get glad again, I promise you. It'll take a 3-year-old a few minutes to get glad again after they've got mad. It'll take a teenager maybe half a day, but they do eventually come round. But we need to listen to them. We need to acknowledge how they're feeling, but we can't buy into the guilt. Yes, we must listen, but if there's nothing we can do to change it, we need to change the quality of the time we have when we're with our children. They don't mind if we work, they don't mind if we're busy, but what they want more of when they're with us is our happiness and less of our stress. They want more of our happiness and less of our stress. So we have to work hard at stepping into the parenting role fully when we're with our children and leaving our work stress behind. And that's why I say switch off your cell phones and shut your laptops. That is a signal to you that you are now present with your children. It's also a signal to your children that you are present. And for those who've got really young children, here's a nice practical tip. When you come in from work, whether it's your home office and you've now switched off your devices and I'm home, or whether you've walked in from the office, if you've got children under the age of 7 or 8, and especially if you've got really young children who can't verbalize that they've missed you, and they will then act it out and make you feel really, really bad, is just lie on the floor. You don't even have to say anything. Lie down, shut up, and see what happens. We are so used to needing to feel like we have to control what's going on and we have to tell our children what to do next. Just try this. Lie down and see what happens. I promise you, your children will be crawling all over you. They'll be stroking your face, poking your eyes, pulling your hair, lying on top of you, tickling you, talking to you. I had someone with an 11-year-old daughter, an accountant with a top firm who spends very little time with her daughter. She said she went home and did exactly what I said. And she said it was the most beautiful evening she's ever spent with her daughter. She didn't force the issue. She let her daughter find a way to reconnect with her very physically. We underestimate how multisensory children are. They need to see us, they need to hear us, they need to touch us, and they need to smell us. That story time, Louisa, you've got little E's, that story time at night when they're tucked in under your arm or they're sitting on your lap or you're lying in bed with them, it's not just about hearing a story. It's actually about you smelling your child and your child smelling you. Your children need to smell you for a minimum of 10 unbroken minutes a day to feel safe and secure that you're really there for them.
Wow, you've just changed the whole meaning of the word present. You know, present needs to be present in all 5 senses. I think you've kind of answered all the questions that I was going to ask. So thank you so much. Thank you so much, Nikki. You know, I once watched a movie called, is it What Women Want? An old movie with Mel Gibson. There was also another one that they did recently, which is What Women Want. They didn't quite get that one right, but anyway, you know, what men want, I think it's quite simple. But you've just answered, I think, the question of what do children want. I think, you know, instead of actually listening to them, we have made up all these things of what we think they want, what we think will make them happy. But as you've said, you know, it is all about presence, and presence is actually where relationship is, because even, you know, in the gospel, the presence of God is where we find our joy, where we find our peace, not in the things, not in the cars or the houses, in the presence of God. So it doesn't matter what you have, how much you have, how little you have. If you have the presence of God in your life, you have everything that you need, everything that you need. So thank you so much, Nikki.